known for a long time that they were going to hit a wall where money growth had to grow vertical. And that's what it's doing. But what they did is they basically pre-cooked up a huge batch of money and hid it so that they could satisfy this need for vertical money growth over the last 10, 12 years since the financial crisis. I believe the financial crisis is when we inflected and went vertical. Tens of trillions of extra money has been created off book dark money, and it's being put to work today.
SDBullion.com is a high-volume physical gold, silver, and precious metal dealer. We are committed to being your trusted source for low-cost, highest quality investment-grade bullion products. Visit SDBullion.com for more information.
Welcome to another Silver Doctors exclusive interview. Today I'm excited to have returning guest, Mr. Rob Kirby from KirbyAnalytics.com. Kirby is a regular guest here on Silver Doctors, so you guys know who he is, so I'm going to dive right into it. So, Rob, welcome back to Silver Doctors.
Pleasure to be with you again, Mike.
Hey, it was great having you. Definitely looking forward to finding out what's on your mind, what's going on, and getting your thoughts on a variety of subject matter. So I have a long list of things here, so I'm going to try to get right into it. And so my very first question for you, we're beyond the halfway point in 2019. I'm interested in finding out what are some things that concerns Rob Kirby about the financial markets. Anything in particular that really jumps out?
On a broad basis, I would say the failure of the precious metals to gain traction in terms of upward price movement above what the minuscule rally we've seen to date is somewhat of a concern. Of equal concern has been the extreme rebound in the cryptocurrencies. Specifically, I'm referencing Bitcoin there. And the other really big topic is, and the mainstream doesn't seem to want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, Mike, is the work of Catherine Austin Fitts and Dr. Mark Skidmore about the missing 21 trillion, which is probably more like a missing 50 trillion. And that references a deep dive on the part of Skidmore and his research staff at Michigan State University into government's data, financial data, covering a period of 1998 to 2015 in DOD, Department of Defense, and HUD, Housing and Urban Development. So in those two agencies alone, in that time period that I referenced, there's 21 trillion in undocumented, basically they just don't know where the money's gone. But the money was on their books, and they both believe that the money was created, as do I, and it's missing. And I refer to it as dark money. And I personally believe that much of that money has been siloed or housed in the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which is an adjunct of the U.S. Treasury, that basically does not report any financials. So those are the three big things, I guess.
All right. Okay, so yeah, I want to dive right into that.
That's a mouthful.
That's okay. So I want to dive into that because I've heard a lot of people more so mention the 21 missing trillion or whatever it might be. No one officially knows. But yet you mentioned it could be siloed somewhere. Who knows? But, another question would be, if that money was to now magically reappear into the markets or into something, wouldn't that be problematic as far as, we already know what's on the balance sheets, but if this suddenly comes into existence out of nowhere, what type of problems could we be facing possibly?
Well, Mike, my contention is that the 21 trillion that went missing, it has been reappearing. It has been reappearing to prop up the U.S. government bond market. For instance, when China or Russia or Saudi Arabia or Japan, when they have a massive liquidation of U.S. government debt, rates never back up. It seems to me that every time one of these players, major financiers of America, when they do a big debt liquidation, not only is the debt immediately purchased and ongoing auctions performance, continues unabatedly strong. but then rates rally. Like in any other country that issues debt, I can well imagine that if a major holder of that country's debt were to liquidate very large amounts, as we know have been liquidated by the likes of China, Saudi Arabia, Japan, Russia at times, it would wreak havoc in their full funding edifice, but never in America. So some of that 21 trillion is being used to basically make the dollar look strong and the bond market look liquid, and I would have it that this missing 21 trillion is the reason why the United States of America has never had a failed bond auction. I come from a bond background, and I can tell you that every country in the world that issues sovereign debt has had a failed bond auction at one time or another. And like America is the only country in the world that issues sovereign debt and is the biggest issuer of sovereign debt that has never had a failed auction. And, like that just doesn't compute with me. Right. To me, it's like saying you live in a place that's never had rain, like ever, right. And even the desert gets rain at some point in time. But in America, no, never a failed bond auction, and there's nothing to see here move along.
Now, I understand completely what you're saying now. So that lets me know that if that dark money is sitting around being utilized to prop up and keep this thing going, then, question is how much has been spent of it if we were to try to throw a number out there, and then how much is probably still sitting there to keep this thing going for a lot longer than we probably could imagine, you think?
Well, the fact of the matter to me, Mike, is that it's already gone on a lot longer or further than anyone really imagined. Because I would have figured this whole experiment with fiat money would have collapsed years ago, and it hasn't. So it's more or less you can eliminate things by deduction, and whatever's left over is what it must be. I mean, I remember years ago, Mike, like dating back to the financial crisis, that I used to make the statement that through the financial crisis, which has been mischaracterized in the mainstream media to begin with. But without going there, I've always stated that this would end, ultimately, this experiment with fiat money would end in a massive hyperinflation. And I remember people saying to me, well, Kirby, you talk about a hyperinflation. Where's the money going to come from to create the hyperinflation? Well, the reality, Mike, is it's already been created. That's the 21 trillion or more that was created, and it had to be created if you understand the mechanics in the life cycle of fiat money, irredeemable fiat money with compound interest. And I mean, all you need to do is look at the work of Chris Martenson, who did a brilliant little expose called The Crash Course, where he explained the life cycle of any fiat money system. And the money supply growth in an irredeemable fiat money system with compound interest, in any system of such as that, the money supply grows at first at a very, very shallow upward to the right incline, but then it inflects and it goes vertical, which means that the money growth has to be vertical or the system collapses on itself. It literally implodes. We've been on the vertical part of the curve now for quite some time with the US dollar. US money growth is much bigger than anybody understands or will admit. And you see, the people behind the dollar, the maestros at the Fed and the alchemists at the Fed, I would have them better described as, they've known for a long time that they were going to hit a wall where money growth had to grow vertical. And that's what it's doing. But what they did is they basically pre-cooked up a huge batch of money and hid it so that they could satisfy this need for vertical money growth. And that's exactly what we have been experiencing over the last 10, 12 years since the financial crisis. I believe the financial crisis is when we inflected and went vertical.
Right.
And I recommend anybody go Google Chris Martenson Crash Course and watch the video yourself. It explains exactly what's going on in our world if you want to accept the notion that tens of trillions of extra money has been created off book dark money, and it's being put to work today.
Right. Now, as you mentioned those things, a couple of thoughts come to mind in reference to, what does that actually look like? And so I know the Federal Reserve tells us, as far as actual currency and creation, I think there's 1.6 trillion or so actual notes. And then we know digitally there's, 20, 30 trillion in investment accounts and all the markets or whatnot. So as a part of that 21 trillion, do you think the actual printing presses were ramped up and so there's pallets, or do they digitally set some currency aside, or just no one knows, but is it more than 1.6 trillion pieces of paper floating around?
It's irrelevant whether it's paper or whether it's digital.
Yeah.
Most accounts are settled digitally. Most international trade accounts are settled in digital dollars. They still technically say that the money gets moved through if it gets moved through the SWIFT system, it's digitally, literally digitally moved from one country's account to the next country's account. But I mean, this money has been created. This money has been being put to use or put to work, and what it really comes down to is the monetary aggregates that we are told are the state of the world's money, and the monetary aggregate data is kept by the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, and they're the keeper of the monetary aggregate data for the dollar. And basically, what I'm saying is the monetary aggregate data that they're giving us, it's a lie. It grossly understates how much money has been created, and I mean that's really what's at the crux of this missing 21 trillion. We don't know how much money has been created, okay? And when Skidmore and Fitz put this to the administration, like the way they reacted, if the money really wasn't this extra 21 trillion wasn't created, then ask yourself, why did the federal government, when they first published this data, and they linked back to the government's own raw data to show people that they weren't blowing smoke up anyone's rear end, and well, the first thing the government did was they killed all the links to the government data. Okay, but they had saved it all and posted it on Catherine Fitz's site, Solari.com. So that didn't work. So then what they did is they had regulators rewrite the financial regulations, this updated version of regulatory financial apparatus is called FASB 56. And what FASB 56 is all about, really in a nutshell, is it excuses the federal government in America from accounting. Okay, so the federal government no longer has to keep accurate books, which means they can lie, legally lie. Okay, and this is all surrounding the issue of more money being created than what they're admitting to. Like these are not the actions of people that are innocent of what they're being accused of. These are the actions of a guilty party, and and this is why foreign countries are making arrangements to settle international accounts in other than dollars.
Right.
Because why does a foreign country want to settle their international accounts in a currency where the people who have the power to create it don't have accounting and won't admit how many dollars are in existence?
Right.
That dog isn't going to hunt.
Right, I agree. And so speaking of that, I want to get on right to the next subject, which I think just tied directly into this. And so recently, of course, we have a president that loves using Twitter to basically share his thoughts on political matters. And so amongst the trade war, the currency war, it looks like, China, once again, are currency manipulators, but they're not. But then they're, using additional currency to prop up their system. And so the tweet was in reference to perhaps we should do the same or something like that. And so it looks like, President Trump is wanting more easy by putting pressure on the Fed to drop interest rates and begin QE. So it looks like, there's a demand, or there's a need, according to our president, for more dark money, funny money, whatever you want to call it. What are your thoughts on that? Because it looks like they're wanting additional stimulus type of policies in expansion.
Well, I mean, Trump has been trumpeting for lower rates from the Federal Reserve, and in my view, lower rates are interest rates are not our problem. Too much debt is what the real problem is, and too much money has been created. And unfortunately, Mr. Trump is never going to admit to us that 21 or more extra trillion have been created off book. And let's deal with this from the standpoint that the control of the monetary apparatus in America was really changed back in 2006 in an executive order when George W. Bush transferred the ability of, let's just say, the executive right to grant waivers to companies and entities from reporting accurate financials. That power used to rest with the executive. And George W. Bush transferred that authority over to the intelligence community. And at the time, he transferred that authority to his intelligence czar, whose name was John Negroponte. And since then, this to me really marked the rise of the influence of the deep state to a level much greater than we have ever witnessed. And this is what has enabled the deep state to be engaged in shenanigans, like surveilling the would-be candidate Trump, President-elect Trump once he won the election, the surveillance of the House, the wiretapping. I mean, America has gone from being there's a great statement that's making its rounds in the alternative press these days. I think it's attributable to a former head of the NSA, and he says, America used to be a country with a government. Now it's a government that has a country. So this is sort of the nature. This is the nature of what has occurred when the financial levers were passed from somebody who really didn't have a lot between his ears, George W. Bush, over to the intelligence community, who really knew how to push and pull levers and obtain maximum leverage from the from the abilities granted them. So,
right. So to make this swing full circle, I want to get back to one of the other things you mentioned that you led off with when it happened to be with gold, Kurt, the gold price and its inability to continue to hit that momentum. And so we're right around $1,400 an ounce, give or take, and silver about 15-ish. And so what are your thoughts on, with all the issues you just described, and so how come gold and silver are not really hitting that bid to continue higher? I mean, no suppression, manipulation.
Okay, Mike, to begin with, I think ultimately the last card to be played in this financial brouhaha ultimately will be ownership of physical gold and physical silver. But it seems to me that what officialdom or what the deep state or the globalists are trying to push down humanity's throat, they want us all to believe that cryptocurrency or Bitcoin is the new gold. They want us to believe that ownership of cryptocurrency is the go-to last resort thing in the monetary universe. And in my view, that will ultimately end up being a fallacy. So, but this is what they're selling to us. And I look at it from the standpoint, Mike, I mean, I'm just paying attention to what's happening, okay? I'm not a crypto nut or anything, but here's what I've observed. Back in December, Bitcoin was around 3,000 bucks at its low, and gold was roughly, call it 1,200 bucks, ballpark, maybe 1,180, but right around 1,200 bucks. What have we seen since last December? Bitcoin today's trading basically at $12,000. It's up by a factor of 4. Gold's gone up 200 bucks. And a lot of people in the precious metal arena are standing on their chairs and want to strike up the band that the gold's broken out. I say bollocks to that. I don't think gold's broken out at all. Gold is still under control today, as it was, back in December. And Bitcoin has been allowed to take off. And Bitcoin is probably going to continue to take off. And it's probably going dramatically higher in the near term. And I mean, I'm not saying this and promoting Bitcoin as, as investment advice or anything. I'm just paying attention to what I'm seeing. That's all. And I don't own any Bitcoin. But I mean, this is what I'm observing. And to me, it really, really stands out that Bitcoin's being tolerated or promoted. And so that we all think of the ultimate go-to when there's monetary crisis as something digital that can be turned off. It can literally be turned off. So this is where officialdom wants us to put our eggs in that basket. And I think people who are smart don't put all their eggs in that basket and keep some of their eggs at least invested in physical precious metal, which I do believe will have its day in the sunshine, and there will be a return to physical precious metals, and they'll come back with a vengeance when they do. But the timing on it is tricky at best, because right now the globalists have an agenda that they want to push and promote digital currency. So, and this is what they're pushing.
Right. Now, and for those that are aware, and primarily those in the alternative media space, we cover a variety of issues. And so cryptocurrency, of course, has been encouraged. But yeah, if you just watch as to what China and Russia is doing, and they're getting physical gold. And so we have, I think it was back in March, April, BIS mentioned the importance of gold being labeled a tier 1 asset again on commercial balance sheets, bank accounts, whatever. So it lets me know that, they're getting their weight up. They're getting physical, while the younger population that are not aware of monetary history might be the ones more so led down that pathway. But it looks like China and Russia, I'm hearing a lot about a cryptocurrency backed by gold, redeemable in gold. We got the Shanghai futures, they're redeemable in gold. So they're making transactions and dealings with metals. The Eastern Hemisphere is hush over here. Is that a part of this transition to whatever the next system might be, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that, and observably, Russia is playing both of those hands. They're accumulating physical metal, and they are also doing a lot of work is being done on the cryptoverse side. But with the crypto work that I'm aware of that Russia is doing has an element of convertibility and it's in the precious metals arena, where currency is going to be backed by physical metal and will be convertible into physical metal. And yes, I would say that Russia is at the leading edge of that today, and really it should come as no surprise to us. Because Russia is not a sleepy hollow when it comes to making advancements in technological areas. I mean, they were the first into space. They had the first. I mean, these are things a lot of people either dismiss, and I'm not a Russophile either. But I mean, I just, like I say, I pay attention to what's going on around me. And I'm somewhat aware of some work they've been doing in the crypto area, because people that I'm aware of that are doing work with them, and they're very credible. And I also have recently, in the last few days, noticed the seeming coming anointment of Christine Lagarde as the next ECB head. Replacing Mario Draghi, and all I can say to you is that I'm quite aware that Christine Lagarde is very receptive to developments in the cryptoverse and is not anti-cryptocurrency whatsoever if it's done the right way. And I do believe that there are entities that are doing crypto in the right way, and you're likely going to see some sea changes coming in the very near future in the cryptoverse, where cryptocurrencies that are not yet existing will very soon appear like a submarine in the middle of a fleet. And my whole thing with the cryptoverse, I guess, Mike, is a lot of people think that the cryptoverse is either Ethereum, Bitcoin, or Ripple or Litecoin, the 4 or 5 major coins that we know to exist right now. What I'm saying is I really believe there's going to be new players, new currencies that are going to have much more utility than some of the existing ones that we know of today, and they're coming very soon. And it's going to change the whole architecture of the cryptoverse, in my view.
Wow. Well, Rob Kirby, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you here on Silver Doctors. Any last thoughts you want to leave us with? I wanted to touch on the recession aspect or the economic slowdown, whether it's going to be officially 2019, 2020. Any last thoughts you want to share with us on that aspect there?
Mike, it could be any time, because we are, in my view anyway, we're ripe for some kind of a reset in the financial universe.
Well, Rob Kirby, once again, it's great having you on Silver Doctors. Looking forward to staying in contact with you as well as continue to follow your work.
It's been my pleasure, Mike.